Good afternoon, everyone in your space, wherever you find yourself late this afternoon. On behalf of the Queer Faith Collective, I want to welcome you. I am Hanslin Davids, and I work for Inclusive and Affirming Ministries. Many of us have known people this past couple of months that has lost their lives to the violent crimes of against lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex, and queer bodies in our country. As we say this, we also know that currently in our country, we face a deep crisis of a nation that is food secure, but many households that experience food insecurity, of job losses. And it is with these multiple losses of lives against us, of violence perpetrated against many of our siblings as we gather for hope and healing. We want to invite you within this space, and we would like to think and make it for ourselves a safe space and for others around this virtual space. We want to acknowledge the pain and the suffering of many in this time, and also the trauma that it inflicts on our bodies. We invite you within the space of hope and healing with all our own vulnerabilities. We invite you to have a candle with you and also a bowl of water. These symbols will be introduced during this vigil by the different speakers. We also want to invite you during this vigil to sit with the uncomfortability of silence, but also when the music will be playing. The organizers have used the symbol of a light and the bowl of water and music as three symbols throughout this vigil that connects us, but also reminds us of our own shared humanity throughout this virtual space of meeting one another. I invite you now to light your own candle wherever you are and to keep it burning throughout this vigil service. Thank you.
My name is Rabbi Greg from the Cape Town Progressive Jewish Congregation, and I'll be introducing the next section, Remembrance, with a prayer of remembrance and remembering those who have lost their lives due to the homophobic and transphobic attacks in the past year. Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim. God who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, we gather today in mourning for those who have died in homophobic and transphobic violence, their souls taken soon, each soul a heartbreak, each soul a life denied, who didn't need to die. You, God, will tell their stories when you judge our society for its failures in these hours of need. We ask you to bless those who grieve, that they will somehow find comfort. And we ask you to bless those who have died so that their souls are bound up in the bond of life eternal. Ana tiena nafshotechem tzurot bitzroa chaim, utei menuchatam kavod. And may they rest in peace and honor. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed is the one who is with us as we mourn our broken world. We will now share the names of those that we know of who have lost their lives in the homophobic and transphobic attacks. And we invite any participants here to add in the chat the names of those that they would like to be remembered, and these names will be read out afterwards.
Sobonana kwelinye ilizwe, kuyabanda ekhaya ukho, ngincamele ubona uncumo lwakho, sihleli siphele sisixazulu, okwangoku lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo, okwangoku lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo. Uyabona manje akukho xolo, bengcimba namandla andikholelwa, inyembezi azipheli, akusafani la mawungekho ubungathela. Awuyonto ngaphandle kwami, awuyonto kwaphela ubungoza, andinanto njengoba mkile okwangoku lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo, okwangoku lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo lala lala ngoxolo.
Hey. You used to tell me I would go far, ay. You used to tell me I would be a star, ay. I know you living better where you are, ay. You don't need no ice, you don't need no fancy car, ay. Ngelinye ilanga sizobonana, ngelinye ilanga sizobloma, ngelinye ilanga sizobonana, ngelinye ilanga sizobloma. We don't live forever, we don't live forever, but I know that one day we gon' be together. We don't live forever, we don't live forever.
Sobonana kwelinye
May we also remember the names of Aubrey Boshocha, Anele Bengu, Masikole Level, Lulama Vandaba, Cindy Murray, who lost her life to COVID, Lonwabo Jack. May we never forget also Yudi Similane. And may we also remember Reverend Pumzile Mabizela, a hero in our community who lost her fight to illness. If there's anybody whose names want to be shared that have not yet been shared, please write those in the chat now. We'll take a moment to do so. Thank you.
While we'll hear in the next section also of other properties of water, I'm reminded of the New Testament text where Pontius Pilate actually washes his hands off the responsibility and from the responsibility, trying to indicate his innocence and removing himself from Jesus' death. The powers that be today, it seems, also shirk their responsibility in our country to protect the most vulnerable and therefore also LGBTQIA+ lives. As it is the case elsewhere in our continent, perhaps the governing party at this time is looking out for the upcoming elections and therefore making the count and therefore continuing to drag their feet on this legislation, which I think we'll hear more about later in this program on the legislation on hate crimes. And not having the principled stance that we would expect, being in line with our constitution, which protects all rights. So we are left often to fend for ourselves and we feel deserted, unprotected. So we take a moment in this time as we pull our paper and pen perhaps nearer for quiet reflection of what causes us personal frustration right now. What's up for us in our experience? It may be in relation to our LGBTQIA plus lives, to the frustration mentioned with the dragging of feet, to what we experience in our bodies, in our lives. What does still hold us back? Is perhaps bottled up in our psyche and needs to be written down. That will be our opportunity now to take a few moments perhaps and put that down on paper, those frustrations, write it out of our systems and process it. So what is up for us? What is up in your experience? And then we will go forward to a next process. So we're going to take about 3 minutes just in quiet reflection, where you can get that pen and paper near to you and just write a few notes on what's up in your life, in your experience, what causes you frustration. Where are you right now? Let us do that. You've got about half a minute left to just draw your conclusions, draw your reflection to a close. Thank you. So, as we've put down some of those emotions that's up for us, we'll have the opportunity shortly as we divide into small groups to share something of what has come up for us right now. You may not be familiar with everyone in the small group, so you're invited to share only to the depth that you feel prepared. You don't have to share everything that you have written down, but maybe something. The invitation is to unburden your heart, maybe even further a little bit by sharing it in the safety of a group, that which you feel free to do so. And this is a reminder that we are sharing the space. We're allowing 2 minutes, only 2, so it's not a lot, but for each participant to share, and then we move on to the next. So it's not a conversation, it's not giving advice, it's not so much interaction, it's just a little bit of unburdening your own heart, and then allowing the next one also to do the same. 2 minutes each. There will be a pop-up warning after the 2 minutes for conclusion in the top section of your screen. So look out for that and see to it that you get around to share something of your experience and where you are. Nima, if you're ready to beam us around in small groups, that will be very kind.
Shall the co-host just choose a group to go to? Or Nima, are you assigning us?
I didn't know if you wanted to be in a group, but you can. Would you like to would you like to be assigned?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, everybody. Lori, maybe not you.
Yeah, or we can just be in a group together and discuss. Otherwise, we're interfering now with.
It's easy to put you in an individual group too. Super easy.
Yeah, I think.
Except for you, Lori, because you have to bring us back. So let me give everybody a group except for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here we go. And why are you not showing up to be unassigned? Rabbi Greg, you're there. It's not showing me where you are.
Is it room 7 that I should go to?
No, because that's
Reverend
just
Beulah?
Beulah, but I can't find you to assign you is the problem. Does it say you're supposed to go?
No, nothing's coming up.
Your name isn't appearing, but that's usually you come at the top and then I see you, but everybody else's name. Oh, there you are. Yeah, you're supposed to be in group 1.
Group 1? Okay, I'll go there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Nima,
you.
shall I do the broadcast or what do you prefer?
Can you do it as a co-host? I don't know if you can see the groups.
Yeah, I can actually.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, you do it. That's fantastic. That's a big help. I'm going to keep assigning people to rooms. So I put him in group 4, but he went to group 1. I don't know about that. Okay.
How big is the groups? It's
There's
5,
some
so
people who signed on in 2 places. So most of the groups are 4, but you can see some of them have 2 different people that have the same name. So so we'll see.
Okay.
Oh, that's why you have to turn your video on.
Mhm.
Then Lori, whenever you're ready to tell me if you want to say now we'll go on to healing or something like that way, I'll know you're done. And I'll
Okay.
unspotlight you and I'll put up the healing slide.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't really need to, in the plenary, to receive them back. We can go directly to the healing slide, I think, as they come back.
Yeah, you'll see when the breakout rooms are unfilled.
Yeah. We still okay with time now?
Yeah, we're at 5:28, so we're we've got healing and community. So I think we're doing good.
Yeah.
So they got about 2 minutes left.
Altogether? No. It may take a little bit longer. The second person sharing can.
Wait on letting those people in. Oh, okay. Well, they'll be with us then. Hi, all that have just come in. Just know that we'll be back from the breakout rooms and be back in just a few moments.
Ongisiwe is still connecting, it seems. But she's been with us before.
Oh, good. Lori, do you want me to close the rooms now?
No, give it a little bit more time.
Okay.
Um,
It says it'll be
yeah,
closed in 30 seconds unless I give them more time. And I
give a
don't,
little bit of
okay.
time.
I
if
think it'll
possible.
they're all coming back.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oopsie. Okay. So everyone didn't perhaps had equal time for sharing. And I'm just asking your patience to perhaps hold on to what you have there for yourself, and which you perhaps didn't have the opportunity to share. Just hold that lightly within yourself. And as we move on now to the next section, I think you'll have more time to work with it. And although you may not have had the opportunity to share it right now, you may find a space or a person at some stage still even not in during this program, but afterwards, if there is a need to still share. So we are going over to the next slide now. Thanks, Nima.
And so we move to our next section of our journey, which is the healing part of our journey. And it's so important for us to pause long enough to just have a moment of reconciling aspects of our journey together, to visit our narrative, and to take a moment to see the pain and the hope in the journey, not only of our personal lives, but also of our country, also of the LGBTIQ+ community. That we understand that there's always the element of dark and light. And so we are going to take this time just to reconcile those aspects and to pause for a moment. And the water bowl is the opportunity where we're going to use this. So if you haven't yet got a glass of water or a bowl of water, we'll be using that in a little while. So just as we pause now, let's take a moment just to slow down and listen to the following, which is entitled, I'm Not Okay. We are a hurting, angry people. We've experienced death. We've lived in the fear and insecurity. And at times we have lost hope that things will be just and fair. We won't pretend that it's all okay, because it's not. The world is in a mess. How is it that such unspeakable violence is given room to flourish? I'm not okay. It's not okay. I will not mask my pain. I will not sanitize this insanity. In this moment, I will cry. I will cry for justice, and I will cry for healing. My depression rages within me. Is anyone listening? My silent fears take over. Will you see me? My grief is indescribable. Will someone hold me? My body aches desperately. Will I listen to it? My mind races in a million directions. Will I ever find peace? Truth is, I'm not okay. Are you? Let's take a moment to look at ourselves and our bodies, our hearts, our minds, and figure out, where are we not okay? In what ways are you not okay? When you look at your body physically, as we take a little bit of a wellness scan, is your body aching? Is your body hurting? Where is it hurting? Where is it shouting for attention? Mentally, how are you doing? Do you find yourself dipping into low depressions? Are you disillusioned? Is your mind just running in circles? Emotionally, how are you doing? How is your heart? Where are you at when we look at all the grief that we've experienced over the last year? Where are you at? Where has the pain been during this time? When it comes to relationships, how are they doing? Those relationships that may have rejected you because of your orientation, how are those going? Are there still distances, separations? When you're looking at your financial journey, as we all tighten the belt more and more, so many living on the breadline, how is that impacting your body, your heart, your tension? How are you doing spiritually? Are you grounded in something, some way? Or have you lost a sense of faith and belief? And when it comes to your own purpose, do you feel direction? Are you on a path? Are you in a way? Or are you feeling a bit lost and uncertain about where you are to move next? I look at those who bring so much of themselves to the world. They give and they give and they give some more, to the point of exhaustion. Are you that person? Have you given so much? And to what do you give so much? In what areas do you give your energy? What consumes your passion? What takes it out of you where after a while you go, sure, this is too much. I've given too much and I need to press pause. Where do you feel the fire burning in you? I'm going to read something called We March On. And maybe for those who are givers, especially in the LGBTIQ plus community, maybe some of this will resonate for you. We give so much of ourselves passionately, driven to see a better world. Daily we fight exhaustion, forcing tired minds and bodies to just hang in there, find strength to do the work of change, the work of advocacy, the work of changing systems, the work of providing dignity, the work of healing brokenness, the work of seeing justice. We ask ourselves, if not us, then who? Who will stand in the gap? Who will offer protection? Who will educate the ignorant? Who will sound the alarm? And so we burn the candle at both ends to do the work. So few of us so little resources, so much to accomplish, so many obstacles, so much pushback and resistance, all to avoid doing what is right. It seems ridiculous, doesn't it? Sickening, really. But we march on until we can do more, until we can do no more. We give so much of ourselves, driven to see a better world. We march on. I invite you now in this moment to take off your watch if you've got one on, because what we are saying is we're now not working in chronological time in this moment, because emotions and thoughts and feelings and experiences all work in a different rhythm. And so just for this moment, we take off our watches and we acknowledge that we are in a rhythm of being present here and now. And the water is going to be our symbol that we're going to use in this moment. Just a beautiful symbol. And you may want to, during this time, to just play with the water, to notice its reflections and its ripples, to just feel it while you listen to what I'm going to share with us now. It's an adaptation to Psalm 23. God goes before me. I am not alone. Leading beside still waters, I can find refreshment and renewal. And I breathe. For this moment, I choose not to rush. Though I have so much to do and I feel so much pressure, the to-do list is like a mountain that I have to climb every single day. Yet, she makes me stop. And I'm asked to slow down, to slow it right down. Enough to see my reflection in the water. Tired, battered by the storm, exhausted, depleted. I go through the valleys of death over and over again. It leaves me scarred and bruised, but I am determined. I shall not be defeated. The divine is in me and will awaken me. By anointing me with oil, I'm empowered to go on, to fulfill my destiny, the vocation to which I am called. Surely I am enough. I shall walk and I will fear no evil. Change must happen, and I will not sit back and I will not be silent. Please, Holy One, use me. And so we come to the final part where we will use the water almost like anointing oil. You know, anointing oil and was used in biblical times for healing, for burial, but also to set aside people for the work that they are destined to do. It is a way of saying that I have a task of great importance. And so we're going to use this water now. And this will be our way of leading into the next part of our journey, which is about community. So I invite you to use the water, and we're going to just sprinkle aspects of the water in different parts of our body. And so we are reminded that we are healing, that we are finding our purpose, and that we want to be set aside for something precious. And so I place this oil of commitment on my hands. May my labor bring about positive change. I place this oil of consciousness on my forehead. May my mind have clarity of thought. I place the oil of vision on my eyes. May I see what is possible. I place the oil of healing on my heart. May I feel the suffering and lead from a place of compassion. I place this oil of courage on my feet. May I walk with conviction, knowing that who I am is enough. And we move over to the section on where do we go from here.
Good evening, beloveds. Thokoza kogogo nomkhulu abanathi, amagu. This evening's platform was to share praise, creative work, and hold space for each other. The journey to healing is not an easy one, and especially in our country's current context of violence, protests, racial profiling, lockdown restrictions, and the COVID pandemic. Transitioning to this space of healing is made easier when we have community to turn to for support, accompaniment, and collective action. Sia Kumalo will share his reflections on a law reform that can address the intersectional needs of all gender and sexually diverse people. Nearly always forgotten is that no matter how hard people from marginalized or disadvantaged backgrounds try, a host of inequalities base them from getting the same opportunities, or stops them from getting the same opportunities as more privileged people. Policy reformation provides protection for those most marginalized and at best redress for those who have been excluded for far too long. Rochelle Kester will also share her reflections on the current context and how can we work together as activists, faith leaders, and the LGBTI community. I'd like to hand over to Sia Kumalo.
Thank you so much, Tuli. Good evening, everyone. There's that word you used, intersectionality, which oddly is part of, it is recognized by South African law, the Professor Kimberly Crenshaw's theory of the intersectionality of oppressions, which play out especially when there is economic trouble. So what often happens in South Africa is when the economy is tough, there's always somebody who's scapegoated by a lot of communities. Sometimes it's foreign nationals. In this particular, in the last few months, we've seen it happen a lot to members of the LGBTIQ+ community. There won't be time to go into why that plays out. There's a socio-economic analysis. But what this made me realize was a lot of queer Black people especially are very vulnerable to all sorts of dangers and attacks. So queer people are disproportionately represented among the homeless, among those who struggle to find employment, among those who drop out of university. The list goes on. And so I asked myself, well, what policy intervention would be able to fix this? And there's a discussion that's been happening. I mean, 2 days ago, I was on a Twitter space where we were discussing this. The question was, is there anything like queer economic empowerment? Because BEE, or Black Economic Empowerment, for an example, recognizes the struggles of people with disabilities, people in rural areas, women and youth. But for some reason, despite the legacy of apartheid having affected everyone, including queer people, there is no policy that explicitly includes or incentivizes the inclusion of queer people among those to whom redress opportunities should be extended. And a lot of people, when you discuss this, think that these kinds of policy instruments only exist for big business. That's just not true. They're available to everyone, and I do mean everyone. BEE doesn't exclude white people, for an example. It includes Black people, and it's not just for business people. Anybody in South Africa should be able to use it. The idea, though, is you have to ask for, you have to agitate for the policy to be adjusted. But once you do, you'll be able to, or we would be able to shift from being eligible, for an example, for pride or queer shelters, which you can get using BEE as an instrument, to incentivizing both the public and the private sector to fund them if you rewrite the law. So that way, a lot of the initiatives we try to push get funded easier. Another thing you can look at, that will be through socioeconomic contributions in BEE. Another thing we could look at is procurement opportunities for queer-owned businesses. If BEE were rewritten, we'd get a lot more people within our community getting those opportunities. Because again, if you look at a lot of the people who've been attacked in the last few months, they're queer, they're Black, and they were especially vulnerable to those attacks because of the legacy of apartheid. So I think it's important to translate theories like intersectionality into solutions in policy. And then those of us who can agitate for them, agitate for them. It's also important to understand how accessible some of that policy already is. Any South African right now, and I know there's a problem that it's limited to South Africans, but any South African can print a free affidavit offline from the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition's website. There are a few other platforms that have it. You print that affidavit, you put your ID number on this or your business registration number, you get it certified, and for a year that can function as your BEE certificate. You then need a more expensive version of the certificate if you are making more than 10 million Rand. But as long as you're under that threshold, you use that affidavit, and it already opens up a lot of business opportunities if you know how to use it correctly. But what I do believe is that the policy needs to get very specific now about the needs faced by the LGBTI community, especially in rural areas, and especially also in tertiary institutions and many other places that do dovetail into the policy, because a lot of the laws work hand in hand. So for example, BEE also works hand in hand with skills development, employment equity. It's a network of policies that once you push the domino on the one, you start getting a ripple effect on many of them. So I do hope that after this, there can be more of a conversation about how we not only respond to the issues and the crises faced by the LGBTI community, but we advance our rights and our empowerment so that going forward, we are better equipped to survive the challenges we face. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. So in terms of hate crimes and discrimination perpetuated against LGBTI peoples, it's not a new phenomenon. Since and before the decriminalization of legislation of same-sex individuals, there's been a constant and concerted effort by LGBTI communities, movements, and individuals who have fought not only for equality, but for equity for queer individuals. This pushback includes the need to dismantle patriarchal and heteronormative structures that add to the marginalization of people because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or because of their sex characteristics. This year alone, LGBTI persons have suffered tremendous loss nationally, with brutal murders and the deaths of 16 people to date known of our community members. 16 is not an easy number to fathom, and nor does it take into account the cases of discrimination and hate crimes that often goes unreported due to the lack of belief in the justice system, or because of the experience of secondary victimization, or because people just don't want to relive their trauma. Despite this horrid number of deaths that can be attributed to a number of things, namely administrative and structural exclusion of LGBTI people, the collapse of the national task team that is placed within the Department of Justice, who was completely incapacitated and underfunded in their mandate, the lack of political will by our leaders from various political parties, but also the governing party, and then also the lack of visibility in public spaces and by public officials that are there to carry out the mandate to protect people and dismantle things in relation to gender norms and also patriarchal values. However, it must be known that through this loss that we've been hit by of friends, of colleagues, and some of our chosen family, efforts of LGBTI organizations have still been apparent during this time. And this speaks to the resilience and the strength of our community, even when we have been tired, scared, and burnt out. Marches have happened countrywide. In Cape Town, marches were initiated to Parliament. Marches were also put together in light of the death of Lonwabo Jack. In Gauteng, communities rallied for Khale, Bonang Khale, Spaman Lakoza. And in the Eastern Cape, we saw communities also pull together when we found that Lulu Natele was found dead. People organized, they got together, they mourned, they tried to stand together in a time of loss when all we wanted to do was hide for our own safety. There were press conferences that were held, letters that were sent to the president, letters that were sent to the Justice Department. And through all of this grief, there was an emergence of a national movement like the hashtag Justice for Queers A movement, and also Queer Lives Matter. Vigils were held at Constitutional Hill made possible by Gala, Scope, and the students from Activate within WITS. There was a call by faith leaders to their own churches in terms of how we view the LGBTI community and calling for inclusion thereof. So despite everything that had happened, there's been definite effort made by communities in organizing by themselves. But further than that, we were also faced under tremendous stress also with the burden of COVID-19, which also highlighted and brought to light already agitating factors in our community. This means that organizations had to then ensure creative food relief for communities, ensure that there was a wider dispensation of medication, there to create safe spaces for those who were grieving in times of loss, or who were just facing psychosocial needs at that time. And so within this time of grief, there was also agitation by COVID-19, and yet we prevailed. In terms of policy change, there's a lot of things that have been done. The introduction by the Department of Home Affairs of the Identity Management Policy was a great highlight for all of us in terms of inclusion of intersex persons, and then also the possibility of non-binary persons and transgender persons when they are registered at birth. This means that we no longer only have, or we hope to no longer have only the female or male assigned at birth, and that there will be less genital mutilation for intersex people, and that there will also be inclusion in just a very administrative way in terms of forms going forward. Another thing that the Department of Home Affairs has also initiated was to look at marriages and how this can be more inclusive. So we know in South Africa specifically, same-sex marriages are legal, and we've also fought collectively previously to dismantle and disregard Section 6 of the Civil Union Amendment Bill, where Home Affairs officials, by means of conscientious objective were allowed to not marry same-sex couples. But now there is a move toward a more inclusive Marriage Act, which speaks to the opportunity to queer marriage as a whole, to maybe work towards a measure where things are not gendered on our forms in terms of marriage, and where there's an opportunity for us not just to look at marriage in terms of only a heteronormative way going forward. Then with the education, Department of Basic Education, there have been great strides that have been made toward the inclusion, or rather, let's say, social inclusion within the education system by drawing up guidelines that are prescriptions for students at schools that deal with uniforms, sports, also facilities such as bathrooms, to ensure that there is a measure of inclusion of SOGI issues within schools. However, amidst all of this, we are still waiting for the Crime and Hate Speech Bill to be instituted, and the responsibility of that has now been shifted from the Department of Justice to the Constitutional Court. And amidst all of that, we have, though, been able to have and celebrate some victories in regard to strides that are being made. Within South Africa, it's very difficult to get policy change to happen overnight. There's certain processes in place that are filled with bureaucratic tape that ensure certain processes that can sometimes take up to 2, if not longer years, to ensure that these laws and legislation are put into place. However, activists work behind the scenes to ensure that we consistently give input to any kind of laws and policies that affect our lives. So the hope is that going forward, we remember that, yes, we may be going through a period of loss. We have gone through a period of loss. It's not an easy thing to stomach. We are filled with fear. We are scared for ourselves. We are scared for our communities. The way we are marginalized is aggravated and highlighted every day when it comes to things like access of health, when it comes to discrimination, just walking into buildings being misgendered, people just using derogatory language and completely ignoring our constitutional rights. But amidst this, my message is of hope, and that is to say that even though we have suffered and we are experiencing tremendous difficulty, we are a resilient people. We have done and made so many strides in terms of law and change, in terms of social spaces with communities, in terms of engaging communities, in terms of engaging traditional leaders, faith leaders, to ensure that they are also sensitized to our issues and that they understand the lived realities that we go through. So for everybody that is here and the wider community, I would like to say, go in faith, go in joy, go in love. There is yet work to be done, and it takes a long time, but we will get there. And we also just acknowledge the families of the victims of hate crimes that have happened, and we hope that there will be a decrease with the implementation of the National Implementing Strategy from the Department of Justice, which is yet to be implemented. This plan is the most holistic plan for a 5-year period in the country that looks at all aspects of LGBTI lives when it comes to preventative and also reactive measures in relation to hate crimes. It speaks to media visibility, it speaks to community engagement, it speaks to training of officials in the government sector and also in the private sector as well. It asks the questions of South Africa's involvement within the continent and with international structures as well. And it also speaks to the National Strategic Plan of Sexual and Gender-Based Violence that explicitly states that LGBTI people have to be included. The important thing with policy is that we have to have it costed. And as Sia was saying, that measure of inclusive and equity just in employment is important, but we need to start asking different questions. As much as this National Implementing Strategy from the Department of Justice is a great a win and victory. The implementation of that still needs to occur. And so I think within our levels of government, nationally, provincially, and also municipally, on a municipal level, we need to ask the question, what are your plans for LGBTI people? What are the milestones that you're wanting to achieve? What are you trying to achieve per quarter? What are your budgets in relation to this? Does your staff have KPIs that they need to adhere to ensure that this is a mandate that is followed through and that it's not just another talk shop? We need to push for these things on paper because it's not a luxury to have these things for LGBTI people. It is a right. Our constitution includes us, and Section 9 of our constitution says that you cannot discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex. And the difference between equality and equity is that we need to see equity in practice. So thank you for this time. I wish all the people in this room and all the activists on the ground and all of our community a measure of belief that we will overcome because we have so far. Thank you so much.
Is it over to me now? Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me in. And I'm sure I've missed a big part of all of the events of today. And I'm really sad about that. And I had to stop my training for a few minutes just to be part of this because I was not going to cancel this one. I've been reflecting a lot on our experiences over the last few months, if not years, and how we should be responding to those incidences, and especially as people of faith. And I just wanted to share a few words from my own tradition that will hopefully be a message that we can carry, a message of hope that we can carry away with us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the indiscriminately compassionate, the infinitely merciful. As we get to the close of today's gathering of hope and healing, I would like us to reflect on a verse in the Quran that has meaning for us during our most difficult times. And the Quran says, if I may quote the Arabic, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوءِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And most certainly God says that we will challenge you with fear and anxiety, with poverty and hunger, loss of possessions, loss of the lives of our loved ones, and the fruits of our labor. But give glad tidings to those who are patient in their adversity, who, when a calamity befalls them, they say, from God we come, and unto God we must return. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ حَتَّى نَعْلَمُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّابِرِينَ وَنَبْلُوَ أَخْبَارَكُمْ. And we will surely challenge you until we make evident those who relentlessly strive and those who exercise patience, and we will test your reactions in all your affairs. And so often we think that why would a compassionate and a merciful God who created the entire universe out of love put us through challenges that seems so insurmountable at times? Well, God also says in the Quran that God will not give us challenges greater than we have strength to bear. So one of the ways then how we can appreciate the blessing in our challenges is to understand that God's desire for us is to become the best of who we can be. Through God's tough love, God makes us rise up above our pain. And through God's testing, God makes us strengthen our values and our faith in God's divine plan. And through everything that we are made to endure, God is constantly creating a better version of us. As long as we hold on to our values of patience, consistency in serving God's creation. And so may God become the eyes with which we see, and the feet with which we walk, and the loving hearts with which we experience the duality of life, of both pain and joy. I would like us to join in prayer. So let us pray. Allahumma anta salam. God, you are peace. Wa minka salam, and peace comes from you. Wa ilayka ya'udu salam, and peace returns to you. Fahayyina rabbana bis salam. So help us to live and be resurrected in peace. Wa adkhilna al-jannata dar as-salam. And let us enter your final abode in peace. Amen. Thank you.
Hanslin, you're on mute.
Thank you, Tuli. Beloveds, thank you very much. And we want to urge all that are on the Zoom call not to leave, but to hang on for another couple of minutes as we are literally at the end. We want to thank on behalf of the Queer Collective, Rabbi Greg, Laurie Gum, Reverend Beulah, Sia Kumalo, also Nokotula Mdwaha, Rushay Kester, and also Imam Muhsin, and also Jackie Benson. As we are closing, I want to remind you that in our remembrance, we find hope of justice. In our healing, we find hope in community. As we are coming to the end, I want to do a short benediction, a blessing. Thereafter, I want to invite all our participants to blow out your candle. Our technical team will spotlight you and you will be on the main feature board. And as you are on the main feature board, you can blow out your candle and wave. This is a practice of many of us who belong to various faith communities. At the end of services, we are used to gather on the stoop, on the verandas for tea or coffee and conversation. But virtually, we want to honor the fact that you took out your time to be present in today's space.